My name is Tyler. I'm in my third year of working. I'm in sales at Johnson Enterprises. I only have my mother, but she passed away a few years ago. My father is around, but I haven't seen him at all. Today, I managed to close a big deal while I was working overtime at the office. I got approached by Mr. Anderson, the department head, who sees me as his enemy. Good work today. Are you free now? You must be, right? Let's go out for drinks to celebrate the success of your deal. Without giving me a chance to refuse, I had no choice but to follow Mr. Anderson. The reason he dislikes me is because my performance is better than his. He always targets subordinates who outperform him, leading to various forms of harassment. Ignoring greetings is the norm, and important documents for work are pushed back. This causes some people to barely meet deadlines or not meet them at all. Some have left the company because of this, but somehow Mr. Anderson is never held accountable despite the harassment. For some reason, he invited me out for drinks today. Without understanding why, I reluctantly followed him, and we ended up in front of a bar that felt strangely familiar. "Welcome. It must be a bar," the bar's owner greeted us. "Sandra, 2 beers, please." "Sure thing." I'm not good with alcohol, but before I could mention that, he had already placed the order. I'm not really good with alcohol. Complaining about what your superior has chosen for you. No, it's just that. Come on, it's common sense to toast quietly at first. So, I ended up having to drink. I could probably handle weak alcohol or one drink, but I'm really not good with alcohol and try to avoid it as much as possible. I tried to drink slowly, but he kept offering me more. "You're really a dull guy, aren't you? You're supposed to chug it down at times like this. It's no fun otherwise." "Hey, that's kind of harassment, you know. Here, this is on the house. Eat this," the bar owner said, serving steamed clams and wine. Mr. Anderson, now wanting to eat, ordered various dishes. Having food made things a bit better, so the bar owner's generosity was really a lifesaver. After a while, Mr. Anderson, feeling good from the alcohol, started complaining about his subordinates at the company. "He really gets to me, you know. Looks are nothing special, but the fact that his performance is better than mine just irks me. He's useless because his performance is not as good as mine." After being subjected to about 2 hours of this kind of grumbling, some customers walked into the bar. They were clearly gangsters by their appearance. When our eyes met, I got a fierce glare from them, but it seemed best to avoid any interaction. Anderson also caught their eye, but he quickly looked away, which made me think he might be quite a coward. As I was thinking this, Anderson hit me on the head. Ouch. "Hey, you better listen to me when I'm talking. Didn't your dad teach you it's rude not to pay attention to someone speaking?" "Oh, that's right, you don't have a father." "And your mother?" "Oh right, she's gone too. Single-parent kids really lack basic manners. It's troubling. No matter how good your performance is, with that kind of ignorance, you are bound to mess up and get cut eventually." I was furious, not just because he insulted me, but he dragged my mother into it too. The boss seemed to notice my anger and piled on more. "Really, kids without parents are just useless and clueless, aren't they? Seems like it's common with young people like you. In my generation, divorce wasn't a thing. Everyone takes marriage too lightly these days. That's why they end up divorcing, and you end up with failures like you." With that, he downed his drink in one gulp. He seemed to be quite drunk by now. I tried to respond, but Anderson's rant was unstoppable. Insults about me, my parents, my generation. It was just a barrage of negativity. Gradually, my anger subsided, and I decided to focus on enjoying the tasty snacks instead, half listening to him. As a salesperson, I'm used to dealing with this kind of behavior. Sometimes, when I go out to eat with clients, depending on the person, they can't stop complaining about their company, so I treated Anderson's ranting in a similar way. My head still hurt where he'd hit me, but I managed to empty my mind enough to nod along convincingly to his story. After a while, Anderson seemed to have run out of steam and, satisfied, he started to gulp down his drink again. Then he got up to go to the bathroom. With Anderson gone, I took a moment to relax, eating the snacks. I realized they tasted similar to my mother's cooking. This sautéed barak and the stewed chicken and vegetables were dishes she used to make from the beginning. There was something nostalgically familiar about this bar. The smell, the exterior, the interior, it all seemed very familiar, but I couldn't remember when or why. Even the bar owner's face seemed familiar, but I couldn't place when I might have seen her, and asking felt too embarrassing in case I was wrong. Looking around the bar, my eyes met with two men sitting in the back. I nodded slightly and turned back to the menu. Then I heard them call out to me, "Hey kid, you were glaring at us just now, weren't you? Who do you think you're messing with?" I was surprised because I had no such intention. No, I didn't mean anything by it. I'm sorry if it seemed that way. I apologized sincerely, not wanting any trouble. But it didn't seem to calm them down at all. "Don't lie, you were clearly looking at us," one of them insisted. Annoyed by their persistent bothering, I couldn't help but retort, "No, I was just looking around the bar." "Accusing me like that, don't you think you're being a bit too self-conscious?" Then one of them, his face red with anger, grabbed me by the shirt. "Hey, just because you're a bit handsome, don't get cocky, all right? Hey, you guys, give it a rest in the bar, will you?" The bar owner quickly stepped in to stop them, but the guy didn't care. "Violence, huh? I'll call the cops right now," I retorted with confidence. "Oh, yeah? I'll beat you so bad you won't be able to call them." With that, he punched me hard in the face. Shocked by the impact, I fell to the floor, unable to move. But the two of them didn't stop, continuing to beat me mercilessly. I desperately protected my head. The pain was making my consciousness blur. Then the boss came back. "Aunt Mr. Anderson, help." I called for help in a fading voice. Through my blurry vision, I could see the boss smiling. "Ah, this is just perfect. How do you feel, Tyler? I disliked you from the start. You're good-looking, have better performance, and you even seem to get along with the office's darling. Acting all high and mighty, huh? I've always wanted to mess up that face of yours," Anderson said with a smirk. "All right, we'll leave it at this. Where's the money?" One of the men spoke to the boss. "Ah, here you go." The boss handed an envelope, likely containing money, to the man. "Yeah, just my luck today made me feel a lot better." "Thanks, man." "No, thank you. Let's do this again sometime." It turned out these men were in cahoots with Anderson. I thought it was strange that Anderson had invited me out. In my fading consciousness, I regretted my naivety. "Hey, you guys, this kid Tyler, is he?" "Then you're in more danger than he is." Sandra came over and woke me up. "In danger? What are you talking about? He's just a regular guy," the man spoke. The door to the bar opened. Standing there was the head of the Smith Group, now named Bob. The two men in the bar, apparently gangsters from the Smith Group named Steve and Joe, were puzzled as to why their boss had shown up. "Joe, I heard you've been up to something behind the scenes. What are you doing? Who told you to do this?" Bob asked. The two hesitated. "Well, just a bit of—" "Don't mumble. Taking money from civilians and acting as a criminal intermediary. What do you think you're doing using the gang's name? Disgracing our gang like this won't slide easily." Hearing this from the gang leader, the two shrank back. In the background, Anderson was frozen stiff. "Sarah, I'm sorry for the trouble my guys caused. If anything's broken, let me know, and we'll compensate. And you, I'm really sorry about this. We'll cover your medical expenses. Could you get in touch with me?" With that, Bob handed me his business card. "Bob, don't you realize?" Sarah appealed to Bob. Bob had a look of confusion on his face. "What are you talking about?" "That kid is Tyler." At the mention of my name, something shifted in Bob's eyes. "Wait, why is he in this situation then?" "This kid and Mr. Anderson just showed up at the bar, and while Mr. Anderson was in the restroom, your two guys started harassing him. I tried to stop them, but it got out of hand. Then Mr. Anderson mentioned his name, and I knew for sure he's that kid's son. I was about to contact you when conveniently you showed up," Senra explained. "I had heard these two were up to no good, so when I heard they were here, I decided to drop by." "Never expected this kind of reunion?" Bob was surprised, and his face looked like he was about to start yelling. I myself couldn't make sense of my connection to this man. In the next moment, Bob punched Steve and then kicked Joe. The two were bewildered by why they were being attacked, but Bob didn't stop assaulting them. In no time, they were beaten so badly they couldn't stand. "Don, why would you?" "Shut it. Bite down and take it." Sandry intervened to calm the still furious Bob. Hey, take it easy. We're inside a bar. This kid is shocked too. Hearing that, Bob seemed to come back to himself. Sorry about that. SRA, I'll bring the first aid kit right now. She disappeared to the back. The two beaten men were lying on the floor, about to lose consciousness. Anderson was trying to sneak away from the scene. Hey, you're involved in this too, right? You, the one who hired them. Don't think you can just get away. Caught by Bob, Anderson was herded to the back of the bar. Bob helped me to my feet. I'm sorry. No, it's all right. A silence followed between us for a while. Then SRA came with a first aid kit and started treating my injuries. You're Tyler, right? Susan's son. When Henry asked me that, I was surprised. Wait, you knew my mom? Knew her. We were best friends. I was shocked to hear she passed away a few years ago. I really regret not being able to see her one last time, Sandra said, her eyes filling with tears. My mom's funeral had been a small affair, just family. Since it was just me and my mom, I didn't know her friends and could only contact relatives. Wait, so you knew my mom? Does that mean you knew this guy too? I asked, glancing at Bob. I'd like to explain that part, Bob said, and began speaking softly. 28 years ago, I married your mother, but 2 years later you were born. I was often absent, immersed in my work within certain circles. Your mother grew tired of it and left with you 20 years ago, leaving only a divorce notice. Despite attempts to reconnect, she prevented me from seeing you. We maintained in sparse contact until her passing, but she kept you away from me, fearing you followed the same path. As Bob spoke, tears streamed down his face, and I couldn't help but cry too. Your mom left me to protect you, your family. The three of you used to come hang out here. It's a long time ago, you might not remember. After she split with Bob, she cut ties with this place and me. It was really lonely, but I'm glad to see her doing well. Sandra too started to cry as she spoke. So, you're my father? I managed through tears, showing a messy smile. Jay, it's been 20 years. You've grown so much. I've really wanted to see you. Bob hugged me, a moment filled with emotion. There was someone else tearing up. That was Mr. Anderson. Realizing this, I snapped back to reality. Dad, I was brought here by Mr. Anderson, my superior. Then those two guys started harassing me, leading to this situation. What do you think we should do about him? After pondering for a moment, Bob asked. Anderson was frozen in fear. Where do you work now? I'm in sales at Johnson Enterprises. The CEO of Johnson Enterprises is a friend of mine. I'll give him a call right now. Hearing this, Anderson panicked, perhaps fearing the worst, and suddenly knelt down. Tyler, I'm sorry. This was all just a spur of the moment. Please don't tell the company. Watching Anderson now groveling, I was disgusted. It's too late for that. What you've done to me is a crime, and the harassment at the company too. And it's not just me, right? Many others have been troubled by your actions. It's time to settle this. As I declared this, Anderson looked utterly defeated. Hello, Mr. Johnson. This is Bob. Do you know Tyler from your company? Oh, you do? Well, he's actually my son. Yeah, it seems he has something to discuss with you. May I put him on? Bob handed me the phone. Hi, Mr. Johnson, it's Tyler. Thanks for taking my call. I need to discuss Mr. Anderson, our manager. I've been facing harassment lately, like excessive workload, being ignored, and even physical violence. Others in the company are dealing with similar issues. I'm hoping for intervention, or I might have to resign. Your consideration would mean a lot. I'll pass you back to my father now. Hello, Mr. Johnson. Sorry, Anderson's causing trouble, but I trust you'll handle it appropriately. Thank you for understanding. Goodbye. Bob ended the call. Anderson was in a daze. It turns out Anderson's father knew Mr. Johnson, which is how Anderson landed the job and climbed up to being a manager despite his poor performance. If I ended up resigning at this age, finding another job would be tough. Anderson, up until now, I've only focused on work and turned a blind eye to your behavior. If it didn't interfere with work, I thought it was fine, but this time you've gone too far. You were laughing while I was getting beaten up. You might say you didn't expect things to turn out this way, but unfortunately, That excuse won't fly anymore. Your selfish actions are causing trouble for everyone. I won't let you do whatever you want anymore. As I said this, Anderson, perhaps in desperation, swung a punch at me. Caught off guard by the sudden movement, I couldn't move. That's when Bob, from behind me, grabbed Anderson's swinging arm and effortlessly threw him over his shoulder. Ow! Slammed onto the floor, Anderson groaned in pain. Sandra, do you have any rope or something? We need to tie this guy up or he'll run away. Sure thing. With that, Sandra brought over some plastic rope, and Bob tied up Anderson. Listen, Tyler, you are truly my son, and I'm the head of this gang. I might not live in the mainstream world, but I have my connections. If you're ever in trouble, just let me know. I want to make up for the 20 years we've been apart. Thanks, Dad, but I want to live my life without relying on you as much as possible. Of course, we can make up for the lost 20 years by going out for meals and such. I didn't want to rely on Bob's power to live my life. I thought that's not what my mother would have wanted, but I had decided to slowly make up for the time with my father. He's my only remaining parent, after all. Tyler, that's very mature of you. Your mom probably wished for that too. She used to say that a lot when she came to the shop, that she wanted you to be independent like Bob. She said that was the only thing about Bob she respected. She must be happy looking down on you from heaven, seeing how much you've grown. I believe she's happy. My mom always told me she wanted me to live a great life, to be a man who can stand on his own 2 feet. That's how she raised me to fulfill her wish. That's why I've been working so hard. Well done, truly. Susan raised you well, didn't she, Bob? Yeah, I caused Susan a lot of trouble, left all the parenting to her. I think I made her go through hard times. But she always said she wanted you to be independent like me. But she also said she didn't want you living in the same world as me. You're turning out so well, thanks to Susan. The two were once again brought to tears, talking about my mom. Enough crying. Go tell my mom directly. Visit her grave later, will you? Hearing this, Bob and Sandra smiled happily. I realized I wanted to be involved with these people for a long time. But what about these guys? I had almost forgotten about the gangsters, Steve and Joe. They were already beaten up but seemed conscious, trying to sneak out of the shop. Hey, where do you think you're going? Let's hear what you have to say. The two sat down formally and looked at each other. Yes, we understand. So I've been hearing rumors about you two lately. Is it true you're taking money from civilians to beat people up? When the two remained silent, Bob pressed on further. Don't just stay quiet. Spit it out. Frightened, the two complied. Yes, it started when a friend asked us. He wanted us to teach someone who bullied him a lesson, and he'd pay us. We were thanked a lot at that time and felt pretty good about ourselves. At first, we only targeted bullies, but gradually we lost sight of the line, and now we don't discriminate, Steve explained slowly. I see, so it started with good intentions. You thought using the Smith gang's name would keep the cops off your back, but what you've done has tarnished our gang's name. A step in the wrong direction, and even using the gang's name won't save you from getting caught. So, how did you get to know this Anderson guy? We met him at a bar nearby. He heard about us from his friend and approached us. Then we listened to his request and took on the job, Joe explained. Bob was silent for a moment. So you had no prior knowledge of Tyler? You acted. Yes, that's right. Is that so? After a moment of thought, Bob spoke to me. Hey, what do you want to do with these guys? As I remained silent, Anderson spoke up. I didn't tell them to go this far. I just asked them to scare you a bit because I was angry. Angry? What are you talking about? You said to beat him up so badly he couldn't come to work. That's right, I heard it too. The gangsters and Anderson began arguing. Shut up. It doesn't matter now. The reason things got to this point is because of Anderson. But ultimately, you two are the ones who laid hands on Tyler. Either way, all three of you are in the wrong. Silenced by Bob's shout, the three of them quieted down instantly. I had decided what to do with the two. Dad, I can't let it go after being hit like that. Can I get back at them? With that, Bob quickly agreed. That's my son, so I decided to give Steve and Joe a taste of their own medicine with Bob's help. Though they were almost in tears, I poured all I had into a single punch and landed it squarely on Steve's face, knocking him out cold. Joe was quickly knocked out by Bob as well. I feel so much better, thanks Dad. No problem, but you've got some good muscles there. You could be my successor. Bob. Bob was quickly admonished by SRA, laughing it off as a joke. They're knocked out, but what should we do with them? No worries, I'll call for a pickup. Bob made a call somewhere. Their ride will be here soon, so don't worry. As for Anderson, the CEO is supposed to come for him. What will happen to them now? Probably after receiving punishment from the gang, they'll either turn themselves in or be expelled. Though what happens could change based on my decision. Tyler, do you want to press charges? If you do, it'll likely lead to them turning themselves in. No. I think I'm good. I got back at them, and I feel cleared up. I'll leave the rest to you, Dad. But I don't know how the others who were harassed by them feel. Well, that's true. I know these guys aren't bad to the core, so I want them to pay for their crimes and never come back to this world again. These two were guys that Bob had taken a liking to early on. They were picked up by Bob when they were disillusioned with the world and lashing out. However, Bob had been too busy recently to look after them properly. Bob also mentioned regretting having brought them into this world. It seems there's a desire for them to start their lives over again. Hearing this, I thought about how passionate a person he was. Then the door to the shop opened. There stood Mr. Johnson Anderson. What on earth is this? The CEO was shocked by the situation. As I explained what happened, he deeply apologized. I apologize for the incident. It was an oversight on my part. We'll be discussing Anderson's resignation. Tyler, please remain with the company. Bob, I'm sorry for any inconvenience. I hope you'll continue to support us, Mr. Johnson. I'd like to ask for your continued support as well, for both my son and myself. Anderson was taken away by the CEO. His back looked smaller, perhaps in despair about what lay ahead. Soon after, Bob's top disciple arrived. Bob, sorry to keep you waiting. These are the guys, huh? Really, what have you two been up to? Wake up. Startled awake by the shout, the two men suddenly snapped to attention. Seeing the person standing there, they trembled in fear. Bob, I'm really sorry. I was asked to take care of these guys, and I'll make sure they're properly disciplined, so don't worry. All right, I'll get in touch with you about what to do next. Got it. Thanks. Come on, you two, get up. Grabbed forcefully by the neck, the two were taken away. It seems things have calmed down for now. I was worried about what might have happened if Bob hadn't shown up. Your timing has always been impeccable. Sandra laughed heartily and slapped Bob's back hard. Ouch. Well, yeah. Hey, Tyler, how about we grab some food after this? What are you talking about? We have to clean up the shop first. With all this mess, we won't be able to open tomorrow. I'll treat you to dinner, so please help clean up before you go. Realizing the shop was in disarray, Sandra eyed us. Sorry, we'll take responsibility and clean up. Dad, let's get to it. So Tyler and Bob set about tidying up the shop that evening. We were treated to Sandra's special curry. Before we knew it, morning had arrived. I had taken the day off, so I planned to go to the hospital later to treat my injuries. I'll get in touch later. See you around. Bob left with a refreshing look, his figure somehow dazzling. Later, I was directly informed by Mr. Johnson that Anderson had resigned. After conducting interviews with the staff, it turned out that a significant number had been harassed by Anderson. Some were even on leave due to depression. Mr. Johnson apologized to me repeatedly. He had heard good things about my performance and praised me, asking me to continue doing my best for the company. I agreed, and even now, I continue to achieve excellent results at the company. On a day off, I found myself at a particular place with my dad and Sandra. Susan, I'm sorry I couldn't understand your feelings better. If only I had matured sooner, we might have reconciled after that fight. I truly regret it. In a few decades when it's my time, let's be friends again. Over there, saying so, Sandra prayed in front of my mother's grave, shedding tears for a long time. Then it was my dad's turn to pray. Susan, I was wrong back then. My regrets are endless. And thank you for raising our son Tyler into such a fine person. From now on, I'll watch over Tyler. So you have fun in that world. Leave the rest to me. He stood up after saying that. It looks like I'll end up taking care of Dad in his old age. What? I'm still in my prime. As we bantered, a strong wind blew. There was a familiar scent in the air. That was Susan, wasn't it? Definitely. She must be telling us to take care of each other and to stay healthy. Yeah, I think so too. That must have been Mom. Looking up at the sky, we decided to continue. All right, let's go grab some food. What do you want to eat? I want barbecue, the expensive kind. You're not holding back just because I'm paying. Of course, I'm your son, after all. All right, let's go. I'm starving. Sandra, leading the way, called us as we playfully followed her. After that, my dad and I made a point to meet up frequently, filling in the gaps of the 20 years we missed. We shared updates about our lives and consulted each other, building a warm father-son relationship.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.